Have you ever walked into a place and felt an unnatural silence, as if the air itself was holding its breath? Some call it paranoia, others call it intuition. But what if I told you that certain places don't just feel wrong? They are wrong. This is the story of a house so cursed that those who enter either vanish without a trace or escape with their minds shattered. A house that has stood for centuries in a quiet UK town, untouched, yet feared, where locals refused to speak of what happened inside. It was just another abandoned Victorian structure until James and Emily, an unsuspecting couple, moved in, completely unaware of the nightmare awaiting them. At first, it was the little things, furniture shifting slightly, whispers from empty rooms, and shadows moving in places where light shouldn't exist. But soon, reality itself started to bend. James began talking in his sleep, murmuring in a voice that wasn't his own. Their dog refused to enter the house, barking furiously at something they couldn't see. And then, one night, Emily discovered something horrifying. Beneath the peeling wallpaper in the basement, hundreds of names were scratched into the walls, each one crossed out. A chilling realization crept over her. These were the names of the previous owners. And then, James disappeared. No forced entry, no struggle. Just gone. The police searched every inch of the house, but there was no trace of him, as if the walls had swallowed him whole. Emily was the only one who made it out alive, but she never spoke about what she saw on her last night there. The house remained standing, waiting for its next victim. The real question is, was it just a house, or something much, much worse? Emily sat alone in the living room, staring at the flickering candlelight. The power had gone out, again. It had been happening every night at exactly 2:43 a.m. Not 2:42, not 2:44. Always the same time. At first, she thought it was just faulty wiring, but then the footsteps started. Soft at first, like someone pacing upstairs, then heavier, closer. She held her breath, gripping the armrest of the couch as the creaking sound stopped just outside the room. Her heart pounded. Slowly, she turned her head toward the hallway. Empty. She was alone. Wasn't she? James was still missing. It had been 3 days. The police had searched every corner of the house, questioned every neighbor, and found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no signs of a struggle. It was as if he had never existed. Emily refused to leave. She had to find answers. The house was changing. The next day, she began searching for clues, anything that could explain what was happening. That's when she noticed something chilling. The house was changing. The furniture wasn't just moving slightly anymore. It was rearranging itself. The door to the basement, which had been sealed shut when they moved in, was now wide open. Taking slow, hesitant steps, she made her way down. The air grew heavier, thick with an overwhelming rotting smell. At the bottom of the stairs, the dim light from her phone revealed something that made her stomach drop. Deep scratch marks on the walls, as if someone had clawed at them in desperation. And then she saw the names, hundreds of names, scratched into the walls beneath the peeling wallpaper. Every name was followed by a single deep line crossing it out. Her breath caught in her throat. She frantically scanned the list until she found the most recent names. James Carter, crossed out. Her hands trembled as she reached for the wall, running her fingers over the deep grooves of her husband's name. Was this some kind of sick joke? Who had done this? And then she noticed something even more disturbing. Her own name was at the bottom of the list, but it wasn't crossed out. Not yet. A sharp gust of wind blew past her, extinguishing her phone's flashlight for a second. When the light flickered back on, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A shadow stood at the far end of the basement, motionless, watching her. The truth behind the house. Emily bolted up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut. Her breaths were ragged, her hands ice cold. She had to leave now. But just as she reached the front door, the doorknob twisted on its own. She yanked at it, pulling with all her strength. Locked. No matter how hard she struggled, the door wouldn't budge. Every window was sealed shut. That's when she heard it. James's voice. faint, echoing from upstairs. Emily, help me! Her body froze. He was gone. He had disappeared. But what if he hadn't? What if he was still here, somewhere inside the house? Her mind raced. Was the house playing tricks on her? Was she losing her sanity? Or was James really trapped somewhere? She had to know. Slowly, she climbed the staircase, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The voice called again. Emily, please! It was coming from behind the bedroom door. She placed a shaking hand on the doorknob and turned it. The door swung open, and there he was. James stood in the middle of the dark room, his back facing her. His clothes were torn, his skin unnaturally pale. Relief flooded through her. James, she whispered. Oh my God, you're here. But then, he turned around. His face wasn't his. His eyes were completely black, void-like, stretching into an abyss. His mouth twisted into an unnatural grin, stretching far beyond what should be humanly possible. Emily! His voice was layered, like 1,000 voices speaking at once. You shouldn't have stayed. The door behind her slammed shut. Emily screamed, and then the house went silent. The next morning, the house stood silent. The neighbors noticed something odd. Emily's car was still parked outside, but she was nowhere to be seen. The police were called again. They searched every room, every corner, but just like James, Emily was gone. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, just vanished. The house was abandoned once more, waiting for its next occupants. But the locals knew the truth. No one ever really leaves that house. Some say they still hear whispers coming from inside, voices calling for help. Others swear they've seen shadows moving behind the windows, even though the house remains empty. Or does it? What if James and Emily never actually left? What if they're still trapped somewhere between our world and whatever evil lurks inside? The question remains, was the house haunted? Or was it something far worse? If you ever find yourself standing in front of an abandoned house with a strange, uneasy feeling in your gut, trust it. Because some places don't just hold ghosts, they consume souls. Would you dare to step inside? This was just one of many houses with a dark past, but it's not the only one. There are places all over the world where people disappear, where reality bends, and where science has no explanation. Some of them might be closer than you think. If you want to uncover more terrifying mysteries, stay with me. I'll take you deeper into the shadows, where the truth is far more chilling than fiction. Think you can handle it? Let's find out. Subscribe now, before it's too late.